Nepal, a country blessed with diverse landscapes, flora, and fauna.
Wow.
And a country blessed to have wildlife and people living in harmony across the country. This coexistence is proof of Nepal's conservation efforts, which have been touted as a success worldwide. The community-based model has played a pivotal role in this success. And more recently, so has tourism. The community-based conservation model.
It's basically an initiative that involves local communities throughout the process of conservation, and they actively participate in the conservation program. They have full control over the resources, whether it's natural resources or financial resources. They are from planning to implementation of the project, and we have different model of conservation, community-based conservation program in Nepal, and they can be in protected areas, it's buffer zone management and conservation areas, and outside protected area, it's community forest program in Nepal.
What has made conservation efforts successful in Nepal?
To make community-based conservation program successful, we need enabling policy first. So we have good policy that tells about the buffer zone program, community forest, conservation areas. Then we need to have a strong community institution on the ground. So we have buffer zones, community forest users groups, community forest committees, then conservation area management committees in conservation areas. And another key factor is that there should be some economic incentive to improve the livelihood, and again they should have control over the resources. They have access to the resources in both in terms of natural resource or financial resources.
What lessons can Nepal offer other countries when it comes to conservation?
So what we can offer and what other countries can learn from Nepal is the buffer zone management program that channels back 50% of the revenue of protected areas to the communities. And community forest program, the community have full right over the resources and economic and financial resources of a community forest. And the partnership, actually collaboration or partnership of government, communities and conservation partner like us, that's a unique model of Nepal. And you can see zero poaching. Nepal has able to succeed in zero poaching of rhinos for several years. So that made possible because of this collaboration with all these key actors. And the institution from, we call it People to Prime Minister institution for conservation we have in Nepal. So these are some of the stories we can share with the rest of the world. Okay, like the Chittor National Park earns, if it earns millions of rupees, 50% of that financial resources goes back to the buffer zone community institutions so that they can do any kind of development activities or conservation activities in and around buffer zone. And also the park have given them forest of the community, forest of the buffer zone. So they can meet their daily needs from those forest resources, and they can invest those financial resources to improve their livelihood, to improve the forest condition and to meet their other needs.
The human and wildlife relationship.
अब खासमा चाहिँ वन्यजन्तुसँग हामी मिलेरै बसिरहेछौँ जस्तो अनुभव भइरहेछ अहिले हामीलाई, हैन? वन्यजन्तु समय समयमा खेतबालीमा आएर र कुनै बेला वन्यजन्तु आफ्नो वासस्थानभन्दा गाउँतिर आएर चाहिँ हामीलाई अलिकति त्यो खेतीबाली धानबाली गहुँबाली लगायतको केही खेतबारीमा आएर दुःख दिने र कुनै बेला घर पनि आएर तोडिदिने गर्छ र त्यसलाई अब अलिकति त्यो समस्यालाई समाधान गर्नको लागि चाहिँ हाम्रो सम्बन्धित निकाय सरकारवाला यो बर्दिया राष्ट्रिय निकुञ्ज र मध्यवर्ती क्षेत्र लगायतको यो संरक्षणसँग काम गर्ने संस्थाहरूले चाहिँ केही न केही अलिकति क्षतिपूर्ति राहत दिएर चाहिँ त्यसको समस्या समाधान गर्छ भने अरू थप उपाय भनेको चाहिँ अब जङ्गली जनावर आउने बाटोमा यो बीचबीचमा यो सोलर फेन्सी भनेर एउटा अहिले आएर चाहिँ हामीले तार जाली सानो जनावरको लागि तार जाली लगाएर यो जङ्गली जनावरलाई गाउँतिर नआएर उनीहरू जङ्गलमै बस्ने गरी तार जालीको व्यवस्था गरेछौँ। यस्तै यस्तै कुराले चाहिँ अलिकति व्यवस्थापन गरिरहेछौँ। जङ्गली जनावरसँग मिलेर बस्न खोजिरहेछौँ। उनीहरू जङ्गलमै बसुन् र हामी यतातिर बसौँ र अरू कुरा चाहिँ हामीसँग जङ्गली जनावरले दुःख मात्रै नदिएर यिनीहरू भनेको हाम्रो अवसर पनि हो। अब हामीसँग विभिन्न पर्यटकहरू आउँछ, पाहुनाहरू आउँछ, उनीहरूको मुख्य चाहना भनेको चाहिँ जङ्गली जनावर हेर्न पाए हुन्थ्यो भन्ने हुन्छ। त्यसले गर्दा हामीले हाम्रो नजिकै रहेको सामुदायिक वनमा र बर्दिया राष्ट्रिय निकुञ्जमा चाहिँ पाहुनालाई जङ्गल वक जीप सफारी लगायतको जङ्गल एक्टिभिटिजहरू पनि गराउँछौँ।
There has always been a good balance at the moment between the communities and the national park, because Nepal enrolled programs which is based on community-based conservation. And it means that the national park is not only focusing on conserving the forest for the animals, but also on conserving the national park for the communities, because the communities are depending on the park. And the park is depending on the community. So it's all, I think there is quite a good balance at the moment between the community and the national park. I think there are many good programs running from the park side to support the communities and to create awareness among the communities why it's so important to live in harmony with nature. Do realize that people need the forest for their living. They like to collect grass for their cattle or for the roof of their houses. But they also realize that nature needs people, and the nature needs the people to protect them. And so in general, I think the balance between them is good. When people are confronted with human-wildlife conflicts, when it's not so severe, they accept it. And like when a deer comes to eat your crops, you know you have to, people accept it because you live close to the national park and you know those things can happen. And they may be bound and build an extra fence around their field to protect their crops against the deers. And when a leopard comes to kill your goat or sheep in the middle of the night, it's a big loss for your household when you lose a goat. But then you can go to the national park and you can get compensation for your loss. So there are programs where people can rely on to get compensation for their loss. But if you lose a person who is attacked by a tiger, that loss can never be compensated by money, of course, because that person will never come back. When you lose somebody in your family because of a tiger attack, which is, of course, still in general rare, the attitude becomes a little bit more negative towards conservation of animals. On the other hand, I also know people who were attacked by a tiger or maybe by another animal in the past, by an elephant or by a rhino. They still have lots of love and passion for nature because they know there is a risk when you live close to nature. And when you go inside the park or inside the surrounding buffer zone, you know that you are entering the habitat of wildlife. So you know that there is a risk to go there. And if something happens to you, some people accept that because it's part of life when you live so close to a national park. But in general, I think the Bardia National Park, the whole conservation management system, tries to support people who have been involved in this wildlife conflicts, and also some revenues of the national park, they go to the community and support the community to develop the community.
हाम्रो यहाँ त्यस्तो घटनाहरू चाहिँ थुप्रै छ जुन चाहिँ हामीले सम्झन लायक मान्छौँ। प्रत्येक वर्ष हात्ती आएर यहाँ धान खाइदिन्छ होइन, बथानमा आएर हात्तीहरू धान खाइदिन्छन्। एक दुईवटा हात्तीहरू थुप्रै आउँछ र त्यसलाई हामीले सजिलै स्वीकारेका छौँ अहिलेसम्म। जङ्गल हात्ती खेतमा आएर धान खान्छ, त्यही पनि हामीले हो जङ्गली हात्तीलाई मार्नु हुँदैन, जङ्गली हात्तीलाई संरक्षण गर्नुपर्छ। हामीले गोठाला लगेर जङ्गलमा जान्छौँ, त्यो बेलामा जङ्गली जनावरले हाम्रो गोठालाहरूलाई कुनै बेला मान्छेलाई पनि अट्याक गरेको घटनाहरू छ। त्यसलाई चाहिँ हामीले यो भइहाल्ने कुनै बेला हुने घटना हो, यसलाई चाहिँ हामीले ठुलो रूपमा हेर्नु हुँदैन। यसले गर्दा हामीले संरक्षण गर्न छोड्नु हुँदैन भनेर हामी लागिरहेछौँ। त्यो चाहिँ राम्रो कुरा हो हाम्रो यहाँको लागि। र एकजना हाम्रो यहीँको बाजे हुनुहुन्छ, उहाँलाई चाहिँ हात्तीले होइन बाघले उहाँलाई आक्रमण गर्यो र बाघले आक्रमण गरिसकेपछि अहिले पनि उहाँ पहिला जुन कामहरू गर्दै हुनुहुन्थ्यो, गोठाला जानुहुन्थ्यो र उहाँलाई बाघले मार्यो र अहिले पनि उहाँ गोठाला जानुहुन्छ, त्यही पनि बाघलाई मार्नु हुँदैन, अझै पनि हामीले बाघ संरक्षण गर्नुपर्छ भनेर उहाँ लागि पर्नु भएको छ।
Tourism and conservation.
Tourism gives us or the people revenue to the nation, employment opportunities for the people or entrepreneurs, and then income. So these three things tourism can provide, and also market for local products. And what tourism needs is a good product. So we have national parks, forests, very good products for tourism. So when we have good products and you get tourists, so you get all those income, employment and revenue. So people will try to improve or maintain those natural resources from which they are getting benefit. So it can help, improve the quality of forest or wildlife, so that it helps conservation and can also improve the livelihood of people. So it's a win-win situation if we can promote tourism in a conservation area. It helps both people and wildlife.
Well, tourism is very important for Bardia National Park. And of course, the last year, due to the COVID pandemic, Bardia National Park couldn't welcome so many tourists. But it's very important for the conservation of the park. For example, all the entrance fees that go to conservation programs. And some part of the entrance fees also goes to community projects. So the communities are depending on the tourists, and the Bardia National Park is also depending on visitors. So it helps not only conservation, it helps also the economic growth in this area. And because of the tourists who are bringing in money and income, it also creates jobs here. And not only directly in tourism, like hotels and restaurants, but it also creates indirect income. That people who run a supermarket, people who are working in the field, there is a higher demand for vegetables or other products, which also generates incomes for people who are not directly working in the tourism sector. Tourism also creates awareness how important nature is. Special it is to live so close to a national park, and how special this national park is. So tourists, they create awareness about the fact that the villagers are living in a very, very beautiful environment. And that helps to preserve this environment as well.
Finding balance.
If you really want to make it sustainable, you need to think about how to find the balance between these three groups. What is a good balance? Overcrowded is never good. And when is it overcrowded? That's the question. And that's the thing that's the answer we have to look for, that we will not read that situation. We have to make sure that we find the balance on time.
Responsibilities of travelers when visiting protected areas.
So, they should respect the protocols of whether it's a community forest or it's government managed forest. That's a basic need, because the animal also don't need to be disturbed by those, and the pollution actually, whether it's water pollution or plastic pollution, is getting big problem in Nepal. So they should be in the protected areas with plastic free, so that it help to conserve those areas, or in a forest. And this is also try to use maximum use of local products, so that community can get some benefit.
डल्लामा आउने पर्यटकको जिम्मेवारी भनेको चाहिँ अब उनीहरूले संरक्षणको कुरालाई बुझिदिनु पर्यो हैन, मुख्य कुरा। अनि आएर चाहिँ कमसेकम यहाँ आएर अलिकति संरक्षणको कुरालाई पनि आफूसँग भएको जुन संरक्षणको कुराहरू उहाँहरूले जान्नु भएको छ, त्यो कुरा यहाँको आएर यहाँको समुदायसँग सेयर गरिदिनु भयो भने त्यो चाहिँ राम्रो कुरा। र केही नभए पनि यहाँ आएर हाम्रो यहाँको दल्लामा आएर 1-2 रात बस्दिनु भयो र यहाँको सामुदायिक वन घुम्दिनु भयो भने त्यसले पनि हाम्रो यहाँ वन्यजन्तुलाई संरक्षण गर्न, वन्यजन्तुसँगको यो संरक्षण गर्ने कुराहरू छ, वन्यजन्तुसँग हामीले के कस्तो गरिरहेछौँ त्यसमा चाहिँ हामीलाई अझै प्रेरणादायी हुन्छ कि हामीले वन्यजन्तु संरक्षण गरिरहेछौँ। त्यसले गर्दा चाहिँ अहिले पाहुनाहरू हामीसँग आइराख्नु भएको छ, पर्यटक आइराख्नु भएको छ, उहाँहरूले केही खर्च गरिदिनु भयो भने त्यसले गर्दा हाम्रो यहाँ दिगो जीविकोपार्जनमा, संरक्षणसँग दिगो जीविकोपार्जन गर्नमा पनि सहयोग गर्न अझै यसले प्रेरणा दिन्छ जस्तो लाग्छ।
My concerns are, how do you adapt when you are just visiting the village here? Do you realize which culture there is and how you have to behave yourself to fit in the local community, in the local culture? Second, please do not leave any footprint. Do not leave any waste, because it is really a big issue at the moment. And 3, do not make any noise inside the park and outside the park.